You have not been failing at manifestation. You have been succeeding at the wrong thing. Every technique you have practiced, every visualization, every scripting session, every 369 method, it has been working exactly as designed. The problem is not the method. The problem is where you placed the authority. You handed the outer world the power to decide what is real. And then you asked your imagination to fight against a verdict it had already agreed to accept. But here is what Neville Goddard says in his 1954 lecture series that almost no one in this space has fully absorbed, not as information, but as a lived, embodied truth. You are not in the world. The world is in you, not metaphorically, not poetically, structurally, mechanically, as a precise description of how consciousness and reality actually operate. The Mandukya Upanishad arrived at this same conclusion 2,500 years earlier. It calls the waking state Vaishvanara, the gross awareness that mistakes its projections for an independent reality. The text is not describing mysticism. It is describing a diagnostic error, the same error Neville spent 40 years trying to correct in the Western mind. And most people in this space are still making it. Because here is what the manifestation industry will not tell you. If you are trying to manifest from inside the 3D, reacting to what you see, pushing against what exists, attempting to override the outer world with enough positive thinking, you are operating from the wrong throne entirely. The God within you is not a frequency you tune into. It is the seat of awareness itself. And today we are going back to it. The Bhagavad Gita opens on a battlefield. Arjuna, the warrior, the practitioner, the one who has done everything right, is paralyzed. He looks out at the outer world and lets what he sees determine what is possible. He is overwhelmed by the appearance of things. And Krishna's entire teaching, across 18 chapters of the most precise philosophical text ever written, is one instruction repeated in 100 different ways. Stop looking out there for your authority. Chapter 6, verse 5. Udared atmanatmanam. Elevate yourself by the self. Do not degrade yourself, for the self alone is the friend of the self, and the self alone is its enemy. The self Krishna is describing is not the personality, not the ego that reacts to circumstances. It is what Neville calls I am, the naked awareness before any label is attached to it. The creative force that precedes all form. And the structural error, the one both Neville and the Gita are diagnosing, is this. You keep asking the conditioned self to do the work that only unconditioned awareness can do. When you visualize from a place of lack, you are reinforcing lack. The image is correct. The feeling underneath the image is the actual instruction being sent, and the feeling underneath is I do not yet have this. The subconscious does not receive the picture. It receives the assumption embedded in the act of reaching for a picture. This is what Neville means when he says the feeling is the secret, not emotion as performance. Feeling as the vibrational signature of an assumption already accepted as fact. The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali name this mechanism samskara, the grooved impressions that the subconscious runs like code. Every time you react to the outer world as cause, you deepen the groove. Every time you return to awareness as the origin point, you begin writing new code. And here is the re-hook. What you are about to understand is not a new technique. It is the removal of the interference that has been canceling every technique you have tried. There is a specific movement that Neville describes, and that the Vedantic tradition calls pratyahara, the withdrawal of the senses from external objects. Patanjali lists it as the fifth limb of yoga, not because it is advanced, because it is structural. Before you can plant a new assumption in the subconscious, you have to stop feeding the old assumption with your attention. This is the move most practitioners skip entirely. They attempt to install a new belief while their awareness is still fully anchored to the 3D. They visualize with their eyes closed while their nervous system is broadcasting. The outer world is real, the outer world is real, the outer world is real. And then they wonder why the visualization does not take. The subconscious does not lie. It simply reflects what you have actually accepted as the dominant reality. So the first movement, the one that precedes everything else, is a conscious withdrawal of attention from the outer world and a full return to the source of awareness itself, not escape, not denial, not pretending the 3D does not exist. A deliberate repositioning of where you stand. Neville calls this going within. The Mandukya Upanishad calls it moving from Vaishvanara, waking, surface awareness, toward prajna, the causal awareness where the architect of reality actually lives. And here is what that movement feels like physically, because the body knows before the mind agrees. It feels like everything that was scattered outward begins to gather. Like attention that was sprawling across 100 external reference points slowly pulls back to a single interior point behind the eyes. Like the outer world does not disappear, it simply loses its grip. It becomes background, secondary. A projection that continues running while the projectionist steps back from the machine. That sensation, that gathering, is not imagination. It is the actual experience of consciousness recognizing its own priority over the world it generates. And from that interior position, everything changes. The Vedic texts describe this interior position as the seat of the witness, Sakshi in Sanskrit, the unchanging awareness that observes all movement without being moved. Neville describes it as the state of the wish fulfilled, not a picture of having something, but the interior knowing of one who already is something. These are the same instruction given in two different languages. And here is the precise mechanism. The subconscious does not respond to what you want. It responds to who you are. It cannot do otherwise. It is a mirror, not a vending machine. Feed it the awareness of a person who already lives inside the reality you desire. Not the desire itself, but the settled knowing of one for whom that reality is simply normal, and it has no choice but to reorganize around that signal. This is the throne, not a symbol. A functional description of where consciousness sits when it is operating as cause rather than effect. And the crown, the higher organization of awareness that settles into this position, is the assumption itself, received and accepted as the new law of your inner world. The Upanishads call this adhyaropa, superimposition of the higher truth onto the surface of the conditioned mind. The old groove does not fight the new one, it simply becomes irrelevant. Unused circuits fade. The subconscious routes around them because a stronger signal now exists. The moment you fully occupy the interior seat of awareness, not trying to get there, but recognizing you have always been there, the outer world immediately loses its authority to define you. Not because you have forced it, not because you have overcome it, but because you have simply remembered what it actually is. The outer world is your subconscious mind made visible. It has no creative power of its own. It can only reflect what the interior has already accepted as true. That is its entire function. That is all it has ever been doing. This is not about a single meditation. This is about a permanent repositioning of where you stand in relation to reality. But there is a specific practice rooted in what Neville calls the state akin to sleep, and in the yogic practice of yoga nidra, the threshold between waking and unconscious awareness, that accelerates this integration faster than anything else. In the 90 seconds before you cross from waking into sleep, the subconscious is maximally receptive. The critical faculty, the part of the mind that filters and argues and says, "But what about?" is dissolving. The gatekeeper steps away from the door. This is the moment Neville returns to again and again across his entire body of work. Not because sleep is magic, because the hypnagogic threshold is the point of maximum subconscious access. And here is the precise instruction. Do not visualize a scene in those 90 seconds. Inhabit a knowing. Not, I am watching myself have this. Not, I am picturing this from the outside. But the interior felt reality of a person for whom this is already the case. The relaxed certainty, the satisfied attention, the absence of wanting because wanting implies lack. That specific quality of interior state, not the image, the state, is the instruction your subconscious receives. And because the gatekeeper is down, it receives it without argument. The Yoga Sutras call the result chittavritti nirodha, the stilling of the fluctuations of the mind. What Neville calls revision, what the Gita calls samatvam yoga uchyate. Evenness of mind is yoga, not the evenness of someone trying to be calm, the evenness of someone who already knows. Place your hand at the crown of your head physically or in imagination. Feel the awareness gathering inward from that touch point. Feel the throne beneath you, not as something to acquire, as something you are returning to. Then plant only the assumption of the person you already are in the reality you have chosen. That is the entire practice, not a method imposed from the outside, a recognition of the creative authority that has always been the source of everything you have ever experienced, including everything you have experienced that you did not want. Neville says it plainly in The Power of Awareness. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled and do not reconsider. Not strain, not effort, not override. Assumption, already seated, already true. The outer world has never been your enemy. It has been your most faithful mirror, reflecting back with perfect precision every assumption you have held about yourself and about what is possible. Every delay was a reflection. Every disappointment was a reflection. Every limitation you have ever experienced was the subconscious executing its code with absolute accuracy. This is not a condemnation. It is the most liberating fact in the universe. Because if the outer world is a reflection, then you are not at the mercy of it. You are its author, and authors can rewrite. The Chandogya Upanishad states it in 4 Sanskrit words that Neville spent his entire life translating for the Western mind. Tat Tvam Asi, that thou art. Not a statement of aspiration, a statement of ontological fact. The creative intelligence at the foundation of all reality, the one the Vedas call Brahman, and the awareness reading these words right now are not separate things. I am is the name of God in Exodus. Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman, is the Mahavakya, the great utterance of the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. These texts are not describing different gods. They are pointing at the same recognition, separated by geography and century. The awareness that says I am before any label follows it is the same awareness that generates all of reality. You have not been trying to access God. You have been God, unsuccessfully pretending to be something smaller. The moment you stop pretending, not through effort, but through the simple interior recognition of what you have always been, the outer world has no choice but to follow, because that is its only function. That is all it has ever known how to do. And it is waiting, as it has always been waiting, for you to remember.